And I'm going to hand over now to Kath, who's going to tell us all about her project. Over to Kath. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, firstly, thank you very much to the Museums and Heritage Show for the opportunity to come and speak to you today about the Thomas Wolsey 550 project. I'm Kath Cockshaw, Project Director, and I'm going to talk about the ambition and strategy behind the project, as well as our approach to fundraising.
And I'm Ali Tipping, Programme Manager, and I'm going to be talking to you about how we've engaged with people in heritage in new ways and creative ways, and a bit about the impact that this has started to have in Ipswich.
So the Wolsey 550 project was created to recognise and celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Cardinal Wolsey in his hometown, but also to capitalise strategically on this aspect of the town's heritage for the first time. Thomas Wolsey was Ipswich's most famous son, who rose to become the most powerful statesman and religious figure in the country. And Ipswich has shown its pride in Wolsey by naming lots of things after him over the years and holding events in his memory. But there has never been any strategic plan to capitalise on the town's Tudor and medieval heritage, as Stratford, York, Oxford, Cambridge and others have done so successfully. So unusually, Ipswich has 7 Arts Council funded NPOs, and yet it currently has no cultural strategy. Significantly, the borough and county councils have recently invested in heritage in a capital sense, with the development of a new archives building and changes to the museum. But in order to ensure maximum audiences for both of these, you have to create a culture of investing in culture and heritage for people to want to take part and feel that their own heritage is of value. So a project like Wolsey 550 would usually originate from the museum sector. But back in 2021, after the town centre had taken a bit of a battering from the COVID pandemic, it was the team at Ipswich Central who recognised the forthcoming anniversary and knew that a public programme recognising this aspect of its heritage could be really good for the town and crucially pave the way for further investment and economic development. The Ipswich Central, for background, is the DMO, so the Destination Management Organisation, which administers the town's Business Improvement District scheme, funded by levy-paying member businesses. So the team there arranged a meeting with the National Lottery Heritage Fund and created a project board, which included the local authorities, the university, Suffolk Archives, cultural organisations and schools. And happily, the project attracted support from key organisations and businesses from the get-go. So now Ipswich has celebrated Wolsey-related anniversaries before, including a grand Tudor pageant in 1930, recognising 400 years since his death. So 50 years later, in 1980, the town again recognised the anniversary of Wolsey's death with a programme of music and talks. And here's the printed programme here for Wolsey 450, which is full of fantastic adverts, including underwear and cigarettes. So this was all well before the Lottery Heritage Fund was launched, of course, which I think was 94. And I often wonder, back in 1980, who could have conceived that a project 40 years later, recognising a Wolsey anniversary, could be measured in terms of economic impact and health and well-being. So through consultation across Ipswich, we set our project objectives with lottery criteria in mind, and these included connecting people, increasing aspiration and social mobility, building pride in place. We also said that this project should raise Ipswich's profile and create opportunities for people, for heritage and for place. So now peer knowledge is very useful with this kind of project. So we consulted with the team at Mayflower 400 in Plymouth about our project structure. And following those conversations, the ambition for Wolsey 550 really grew. And it was decided fairly early on to run the programme for 550 days, which is 18 months. So sometimes we regret this purely from a marketing and engagement point of view, because holding people's interest for 18 months is actually very hard. And the reason why we did that was to ensure enough time to properly engage schools to be able to roll out a full 12-month education programme. And as many of you will know, engaging schools can be hard and takes quite a lot of time. So I came on board in April 22, around the time that our expression of interest was going into the lottery for the 250k bid. Essentially, it was decided we were to build a new legacy for Thomas Wolsey in Ipswich. Wolsey's own intended legacy for the town had been his grand plan for a huge college, which would have rivaled Eton and Cambridge. But this was never fully realised due to his fall from grace with Henry VIII. So had the college plan been fulfilled, Ipswich would today be known as a medieval university town, and its story would be very different to what it is today. Heritage would certainly have been writ large in the town's tourism strategy, for example. So now our new legacy for Wolsey centres on education and creating better opportunities for our young people, recognising the value of our heritage and using it to inform decision-making in the town. So engaging partners was something, as I say, was our first priority. And without them, the project really wouldn't have got off the ground. We learned a lot from the Mayflower 400 project, as I've mentioned, in terms of resource planning. So consulting with all of the necessary organisations and producing a 250k lottery bid takes a long time, as a lot of you will know. We allowed 6 months. It was very intensive work, and Ipswich's Business Improvement District underwrote the funding for that period. And then during that time, we needed to raise other funding to get the project off the blocks properly before we received the lottery grant, which of course is never a certain thing. So our key aims of increasing social mobility and building a greater sense of pride in the town really fired up Ipswich's business community to pull together and to get the project off the ground. The wonderful Terry Hunt, who's the ex-editor of the East Anglian Daily Times, is our project chair. And he and I drew together a group of founding partners across the town and raised £60,000 from Ipswich's business community before we received the lottery funding, which was March 23. So we've since raised a further 40,000 through what we've called a gold, ruby and pearl Tudor-focused sponsorship scheme. And now we've set up the Wolsey 550 Club for all prior sponsors and new members to come on board for just £550. So the idea with the 550 Club is to keep those businesses involved in the programme so that they retain a stake in it, and we ensure that we take them with us into the next phase.
So you can see on the slide our wonderful reenactor as Henry VIII. And we think this is quite a funny image because of the word engagement and his 6 wives. Maybe, maybe not. We like to note that link. So the word engagement is critical for our project, for our work with schools, for the work with the public, the media. This is what we're doing all of the time. This is what the lottery are looking for, and it's what they'll be measuring. As many of you will know, you have to commit 10% of your lottery budget to evaluation. So in our case, that's £25,000. And that means measuring your engagement work yourself so that the overall success of your project can also be measured. We think it's fair to say that following deep consultation across Ipswich's communities, when it came to planning our public engagement strategy and our schools programme, our team has boldly gone where none have gone before. Our engagement for this project has come in all shapes and sizes, from a public exhibition to teacher CPD, from a community grants programme to a programme of talks. We've quite literally done it all, not to mention the schools and youth engagement, which is threaded throughout our project. Forward-facing comms has also been really key to that. And we were starting from very much a zero base as a brand new CIC with our engagement figures. So we had to be playful and we had to be inventive. So we created the hashtag Where's Wolsey for our social media campaigns. And here's our brilliant volunteer, Phil Roberts, who's a Wolsey obsessive, author and Wolsey reenactor. And I'll leave you to guess, where is Wolsey? So we kicked off the public programme in partnership with the brilliant Suffolk Archives and a fantastic exhibition last year at their state-of-the-art venue, The Hold, down on Ipswich's waterfront. Here's Wolsey's very own 500-year-old Galero hat on display in the exhibition, which was on loan from Christchurch in Oxford, where it's normally completely obscured from view. For Wolsey, this hat, when it finally was sent by the Pope into London, symbolised everything he had been working for to date. And so naturally, as you would when your hat arrived, he created a large procession through the streets of London to celebrate his hat. And we created a flavour of that event on the waterfront to launch the exhibition last year, with a similar hat arriving into Ipswich on a local cruising boat called the Orwell Lady. Can you imagine my conversation with that boat captain? Would you mind do you think we could just deliver a hat in? Yeah, they just got on board. They just said yes. It was fantastic. We had one of our chaps that we work with at Ipswich Central suddenly shared with us that he's a professional trumpeter. And yeah, he could get his mates along to serenade us. So there they were. And then some other reenactors and the mayor. So our hat parade, which involved a lot of local school children, and as I mentioned, the mayor, really signified the start of the project for the public. And not satisfied with an in-person parade, we also created with our schools a virtual hat parade as well, which we put on our social media. So we had them all passing the hat and then throwing it out of shot, the next school collecting it and throwing it on. As part of the exhibition at the Hold had this wonderful trailer. If you were in the talk previously, you will have seen it kitted out for the Fantastic Arrivals exhibition. But here are some pictures from the trailer. It's got a flavour of the exhibition in there. Usually alongside that, there's an activity. Here's lovely Mandy from the Hold with reenactor Phil, and you've got a little visual of the trailer. And also the Hold created a brilliant map, which was a free walking tour of the town of all the key Wolsey projects. Here are some more images of us out and about at various events, engaging with people. So in addition to the exhibition, we also have a community grants programme. We funded 12 community grants projects, each with up to £3,000 each. We received 26 applications, and we aimed the fund specifically at those smaller organisations who were just working in Ipswich. We kept the application process really simple and accessible, and then we got together a group of an independent panel which represented the various communities of Ipswich to assess and award those grants. And the projects have ranged from the Windrush Society's quilt making project, which you can see on the left. So they've had a series of workshops where they've learnt about how to make a quilt. And then there's going to be an exhibition at the Hold in July. We've had a playscape created for 0 to 5 called Wolsey's Garden. We funded flash mobs for a dementia choir, which you can just see on the right of the screen there. They were doing the conga. There's been a children's book festival. There's been a Tudor Heritage Fair. There's been so much that's come out of that side of it that we just never would have envisaged. And with each project, more links and connections have been made organically and putting those organisations in touch with each other. And it just all then supports the legacy ambitions. The other wonderful thing that's happened is that local organisations have got behind the project, creating their own independent Wolsey-themed activity. Really early on, a local brewer said, hey, I could make a beer. So we've got the Wolsey 550 beer. Ipswich School created an essay writing competition and a concert in Wolsey's name. One of our local churches has hosted a series of Wolsey lectures, and their choir went and performed at Hampton Court. But when a contemporary French artist and an edgy arts festival gets on board, it takes things a little bit to the next level. So last October, on the Cornhill in Ipswich, Oliver Grossetet, who specialises in building landmark structures in different locations out of cardboard and tape, recreated Wolsey's Gate. Now, Wolsey's Gate is the only part of Wolsey's college to have survived, and he consulted with the local people, asking them to choose what should be made, and this is what they chose. He then builds the work on one day, and the next day it's destroyed. And this is a picture of it being pulled down. So there's all those ropes tied around it, and then it'll get pulled down. It's really quite fascinating. If you ever look him up online, because it's really, really interesting what he does. So this was a really exciting project for us to get involved in, and a completely new form of heritage engagement that when we wrote the bid back in 2022, never could have foreseen that something like this would have come along. 12,000 people took part over that weekend. And it's interesting to then compare and measure those statistics and how people then choose to engage with their heritage. And this is a bit what you might call heritage by stealth. Talking of partnerships, in autumn last year, a pub in our local town, which is appropriately called the Thomas Wolsey pub, approached us and asked us if they could get involved. They talked of an aspiration to recreate a dray horse beer delivery in our very much medieval part of town. And so our Tudor Christmas event was born, complete with 2 Suffolk Punch horses, the Gilbert and Sullivan Choir, a storyteller, Tudor reenactors, craft activities, and of course, Cardinal Wolsey, who you can see atop the dray. Again, another activity that we never would have envisaged happening, and it's those partnerships and connections. So that brings me to our current programme of talks and events, which feature a mixture of local historians speaking about the town, a Black history consultant giving a talk about giving insights into Black Tudors, a lecture from Professor Anthony Musson from Historic Royal Palaces about the Field of the Cloth of Gold, and the wonderful podcaster Eleanor Yanega discussing sex and sexuality in medieval England. We've covered it all. As I've mentioned throughout this, partnerships have been really instrumental in this project. And as you've hopefully sensed, we've built several along the way. One such partnership was with Historic England and their Education and Heritage Schools arm, which has funded the delivery of 2 free teacher CPD sessions to support what we're doing with our education project. Here are some teachers from 9 primary schools learning Tudor songs and how to teach them in class, how to play the instruments, how to make instruments, ready for our grand parade that is coming in July, another event that was never in the plan. The parade, which will sort of signify the end of our project, is a celebration, and we're calling it Wolsey's Big Huzzah. It partners with our county music service, and they're using Tudor songs to upskill teachers to feel confident about singing in primary schools, and that feeds back into their own strategic objectives. The parade is going to feature 350 school children performing alongside Tudor musicians from Cambridge and from Colchester and from the town, members of our local choral society, another fantastic project which we funded that I haven't got time to tell you about, but it's grown arms and legs. And also Gecko Theatre, who are an internationally renowned physical theatre company, who here are delivering a workshop in schools, will be working with a group to have a performance on the Cornhill as part of that celebration. I'm going to hand back to Kath, and she's going to tell you a bit more about our education programme. Do it now.
Roll back to the right bit. So Wolsey in schools. So early on, we had to decide how to achieve maximum engagement with schools across the town. Let's get the right slide. Hang on a sec. There we go. To achieve maximum engagement with schools across the town, and after consulting with primary and secondary schools, we decided to focus on Wolsey's go-getting personality and unique journey rather than his achievement per se. So far we've engaged with over 80% of schools in Ipswich, and by December last year, Wolsey himself, our reenactor Phil, had met 5,000 primary school children in assemblies and at events. So working with schools, we decided to deliver confidence building workshops with primary schools, which start with the story of Wolsey as a boy in Ipswich, rising to become Henry VIII's right-hand man. And these are, as Ali said, these are physical performance workshops. And the feedback from children and teachers alike has just been phenomenal, really emotional. At secondary level, we take Wolsey's example further. So his career was completely unprecedented. And we know that children in Ipswich badly need to expand their horizons. So, and we wanted to help them begin to comprehend the options that are available to them in the modern world of work. So our programme links secondary schools in Ipswich with businesses across the town to give children a bit of a window on the real world of work, which don't assess them in any way. So when I spoke to careers education specialists across the town, it transpired that children are being assessed at every level of careers education, and this just flew in the face of what we're about. And because we're not trying to work with any benchmarking schemes, we can be fleet of foot and we can be a bit more creative with that. So as a result of our work, children already, we know from feedback, have new confidence and skills. These are young SEND children in a workshop learning how to build Wolsey's Tudor Ipswich using Minecraft. That's something I would have absolutely loved to do at school. Young people already have a stronger sense of aspiration and pride in place because of the work we're doing. But one of the main topics young people in Ipswich talk a lot about is wanting to feel safe in the town centre. This group of young people from Suffolk One College were given a brief to express their thoughts on that subject of safety and created a new piece of public art. So we're now working with that same group of place changers on aspects of the cardinal route, which I'll come on to now. So the cardinal route is the basis of Wolsey's procession, which he organised to mark the inauguration of his cardinal college on the 8th of September, 1528. It has long been an ambition in Ipswich to better connect the town centre to the waterfront. And it's a bit of a headache at the moment in terms of road planning and stuff that was done in the 60s and the 80s. We're still trying to get over those issues. So the new cardinal route that we've planned will do just that. It extends from Stoke Bridge at the bottom of the orange line there, right through to the Cornhill in the town centre. So this project, which will be executed in phases, will see new historic interpretation go in at either end of the route and at key sites along it. And it crucially includes the demonstrating the extent of the lost college, which actually runs a couple of streets. It was such a big site. So after showing you the how with the programme, etc., let's return now to the why. So essentially, this first phase of our project proves our audience's appetite for heritage before we can then go on to making a much larger bid to the National Lottery for up to £10 million. So, and they have said that any larger investment they make now needs to capitalise on the previous investments in the town. So that includes investment in the museum, in the hold, in this phase of the project and several other smaller projects as well. So we're currently talking with our partners again about what needs to be achieved in that second phase. So that can actually extend up to 7 years. You have a 2-year development phase of another £250,000. Then you apply for your balance of up to 10 million, and the rollout of that phase can take up to 5 years. So if people want guidance on this, the National Lottery Heritage Fund have just published a 10-year strategy, as you will know, and I really advise getting in touch with somebody and having a personal conversation about these bids. So the cardinal route will form part of a new heritage zone in Ipswich, which will enable the town to capitalise on all aspects of its heritage. It will include sites connected to Wolsey, but also key sites right across the town centre. So to be delivered in phases, the Heritage Zone will hopefully include a new Tudor garden. This is not what it's going to look like. This is a made-up image. But at St Peter's Dock, which was the site of the college, and permanent interpretation for Wolsey's Gate, which is not in a good state of repair at the moment, as well as a digital fly-through of the enormous college site. And as well as the capital works, we want to continue to build Wolsey's new legacy in education. So we want to continue the confidence and the careers work that we've been doing with schools, and we're actively fundraising at the moment to make sure we can do that. So when we return to the initial aims for phase one, so through the strategic approach that we've adopted for this project from the get-go with our culture and education partners, and the public feedback that we've already received, we can guarantee that each of these ambitions is already underway. People are already more connected, aspiration is increased, there is a greater sense of pride in place. And as we head into phase two, we know through ongoing work, particularly with businesses and local authorities, that people and businesses are already benefiting. Ipswich's culture and heritage offer is already more on the map, and people feel that their town is a better place. So return to the phrase that I used earlier, Wolsey 550 has started to create that new culture of investing in culture and heritage in Ipswich, which people want to take part in because they feel that their heritage is valued. So thank you very much for listening. We're at the end now, and we'll take some questions.
Okay, let's hear it for the speakers, please. You come up. And we have plenty of time for Q&A. So any questions to kick us off at all? In the least? Oh, great. You saved me. Okay, can you put the mic up really close to your mouth?
I know I was multitasking. Oh, can you hear that? Sorry, and also it's not really a question, but I didn't quite capture the name of the French creative. What was his name?
His name was Olivier Grossetete, Grossetete. So he's worked with lots and lots of towns and cities, I think across Europe, done some fantastic work. It's really interesting.
Anyone else for a question? Yes, right at the back. Hold on. Yeah, really close. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Excellent. If you were to do it again, what would you avoid doing and what hasn't worked?
Okay, I'll take it then. So as I mentioned, I'll take this out. As I mentioned, choosing to do it for 18 months, it's really hard to keep people's engagement across the town. So there's obviously, quite big blocks of time where there's not much going on according to the public, but then you might be really, really busy with schools during that time. So the team is just like, going the whole time, but the public don't necessarily see that activity the whole time. So I would really think about that. And also from a financial resources planning kind of thing, 18 months, a lot of your budget is then going to be chewed up with salaries. So you have to think really carefully about that, like your approach to that, and probably bring in freelancers in a more fluid kind of way. So that's my one. Did you want to say?
I think Kath's pretty much covered it, but I would just add about making sure you get your website right at the start, because that's where everybody's going to head to, and also your comms as well. So it's we had a little struggle with our web at the beginning, and it that was a challenge, and then that puts pressure on your team and so on. So that's the only other bit I would add at this point.
Any more questions? Yes. Put it up really close, yeah.
Hi, I would like to ask you to tell us a bit more about the engagement with the schools, how the workshop went, and what were the challenges on that side, please. Thank you.
Yes, I can. I think that could take quite a long time because there's quite a lot of stuff with schools. So if you'd like to come and have a chat afterwards, I think the sort of strategic decision that we took at the start of not to try and engage everybody in the historic data, because you're not really going to engage every school in that. Some schools are not even really doing any history. So trying to kind of find common ground or common theme that can engage people on their terms was a good decision. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot of education work going on, and it's fabulous. We're really enjoying it. But yeah, come and have a chat afterwards.
Any other questions? Yes.
How are you measuring impact? So engagement is easy. It's like how many people attend something or footfall, but are you measuring impact? How you're measuring that?
I can rely on you, Drea, for asking that question. So we're doing it in lots of different ways. So we have got 2 people working on our evaluation all the way through. From the outset, in the bid, I talked a lot about measuring well-being. Measuring well-being in terms of heritage engagement is a relatively new area, and a lot of people are doing it in a lot of different ways. And so what we wanted to do with this was to be aware of how other people in organisations in Ipswich are measuring that kind of element of our impact, and to make suggestions for what we could do in phase 2 about tightening that measurement across the town, working with the different cultural organisations, and hopefully pooling resources to do that and do it in a much more kind of effective way. So we're collecting a lot of anecdotal feedback. So mainly from our education sessions, the young children in particular, and teachers are giving us really crucial feedback, mostly, which is really, really positive. And what we want to do with that education stuff, as I said, is learn what went really well. And then when we get further funding, which I think we have just received some to take us to March 25, we take the learnings and we make sure that we concentrate on the good stuff and carry on learning as we go. So the evaluation in terms of the qualitative stuff is ongoing, and we do a lot of kind of peer research in that way and just look at how other people are doing that well, borrow their kind of techniques.
Any more questions? Any more? Yes, at the front. Put it up really close.
Hi, yeah, just wanted to ask about where it fits in the bigger picture. I think using heritage to expand and develop Pride and Place is really fantastic. But how did your project fit in with the bigger picture for Ipswich and Pride and Place, particularly the local authority and other players?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So as I said, Ipswich doesn't currently have a cultural strategy, and yet it is investing, particularly recently, quite heavily in cultural assets, heritage assets. And so we have kept the council are a key partner on the project. So it was a triumvirate of 3 organisations that put the bid into the lottery: Ipswich Central, the Borough Council, and the County Council via the Suffolk Archives. So IBC, the Borough Council, had to actually be, on the advice of the lottery, they had to be the principal partner, the main partner, even though effectively they are a silent partner because they're not actually delivering this project. So we keep them very close. They keep us very close. And they have been very supportive through phase 1 in lots of different ways. But what's key now is this bit. So we have 5 months to go on the project, and we're probably a bit overdue in pinning the IBC down into their commitments for the next phase. And so I think in lottery funding terms, where we don't really want a gap where nothing much is going on, we need to kind of hit all these deadlines, and keeping the council on board with that timeline is quite challenging. So again, it's just about building relationships and creating a culture of collaboration with key people in the council in order to take it forward.
I'll come back to you in a moment. Are there any other further questions? Okay, have you got a follow-up, or do you want to have a chat afterwards? Okay, I will bring this to a close.